thousands of Ethiopians across the country have responded to the call to join the Ethiopian National Defense Forces.
Any army that thinks it can waltz into Ethiopia hasn't read its history, felt its mountains, or met its warriors. This isn't just a country, it's one of Africa's toughest fortresses. And in 2026, invading Ethiopia would be one of the biggest strategic mistakes in modern warfare. Today we're breaking down why Ethiopia is nearly impossible to invade. Not hype for the sake of hype, but real military logic backed by history, geography, manpower, and modern realities. This is not just about tanks and jets. This is about a nation that has been forged in resistance for centuries. Ethiopia's story starts with a fact that still makes military historians pause. Ethiopia was never fully colonized. During the scramble for Africa, when European empires carved up almost the entire continent, Ethiopia stood its ground. The defining moment came in 1896 at the Battle of Adwa, when Ethiopian forces defeated a modern European army sent by Italy. This wasn't luck, it was strategy, mass mobilization, leadership, and total understanding of terrain. That single battle changed how the world viewed African military capability, and it permanently embedded resistance into Ethiopian national identity. That legacy never faded. For generations, Ethiopians didn't grow up with the idea that invasion was inevitable. They grew up knowing it could be resisted. That matters, because military culture is built on memory. When soldiers believe their ancestors already proved something is possible, morale works differently. Ethiopia doesn't just defend territory, it defends an identity that has never accepted foreign domination as normal. That mentality carried through the 20th century and into the Cold War era. During the Ogaden War in the late 1970s, Ethiopia faced a serious invasion attempt from Somalia backed by external powers and heavy weaponry. Ethiopia absorbed the shock, reorganized, and eventually pushed the invading forces back. Again, terrain, numbers, and endurance played decisive roles. This wasn't a fragile state collapsing under pressure. This was a country that knows how to absorb blows and keep fighting. Fast forward to modern times, and the Ethiopian National Defense Force remains one of the largest military forces on the African continent by manpower. Conservative estimates still place Ethiopia in the hundreds of thousands of active personnel, with even larger reserves and regional forces that can be mobilized in wartime. Ethiopia's population size alone makes sustained resistance possible in a way few African states can match. Any invading force would not just be fighting an army, it would be preparing for a long, exhausting campaign against a deep manpower pool. But numbers alone don't explain why Ethiopia is such a nightmare to invade. The real silent weapon is geography. Ethiopia's terrain is brutal. Mountain ranges, high plateaus, deep valleys, narrow passes, and limited mobility corridors dominate the landscape. This is not tank-friendly land. This is not easy air assault territory. This is defenders' terrain in the purest sense. Mountains slow advances. They stretch supply lines. They create choke points where smaller forces can delay or destroy larger ones. Ethiopian forces grow up in this environment. They train in it. They know which routes are passable in rainy seasons, which valleys turn into traps, and which high ground controls entire regions. An invading army has to learn all of this while under fire. History shows how deadly that learning curve can be. Even in the modern era of drones and satellite imagery, terrain still matters. Logistics still matter. Fuel still has to move. Food still has to arrive. And in Ethiopia, every kilometer forward becomes more expensive than the last. Invaders don't just face resistance, they face exhaustion. Another critical factor is combat experience. Over the past decade, Ethiopia's military and regional forces have been involved in intense internal conflicts and counterinsurgency operations. While tragic and costly, these wars have produced something many militaries lack: real, sustained battlefield experience. Urban combat, mountain warfare, drone adaptation, intelligence-led operations, and decentralized command structures have all been tested under pressure. These are not parade ground soldiers. These are troops who have operated in complex, fluid battle environments. Commanders have learned painful lessons. Units have adapted or been broken and rebuilt. That kind of institutional experience cannot be replicated through exercises alone. Any external force entering Ethiopia would face an opponent that understands modern conflict not just in theory but in practice. Ethiopia has also been investing in military self-reliance, domestic ammunition production, local defense manufacturing, and growing drone capabilities reduce dependence on foreign supply chains. This matters enormously in a prolonged conflict. Countries that can produce even part of their own military supplies are far harder to choke through sanctions or blockades. Ethiopia doesn't need to match global powers piece for piece. It only needs to sustain resistance long enough to make invasion politically and economically unbearable. There's also the question of national mobilization. Ethiopia's military strength doesn't exist in isolation from its society. Historically, communities have mobilized in times of external threat, forming militias, logistical support networks, and intelligence chains rooted in local knowledge. This creates a layered defense that goes beyond formal military units. An invader may capture a town, but holding it becomes another battle entirely. This is where Ethiopia becomes especially dangerous to outsiders. Occupation is harder than invasion. Every road requires security. Every supply convoy becomes a target. Every local interaction carries risk. Ethiopia's history shows that even when overwhelmed temporarily, resistance never truly disappears. Now let's be clear and stay factual. Ethiopia is not invincible. No country is. It faces internal challenges, political tensions, and economic pressures. But military power isn't just about perfection, it's about cost. And the cost of invading Ethiopia would be staggeringly high. Any invading force would face a combination of massive manpower, unforgiving terrain, experienced fighters, and a population with a historical memory of resistance. This is why Ethiopia is not a soft target. This is why it commands quiet respect across African military circles. People love to argue about rankings. Who has the biggest air force? Who has the most tanks? Nigeria, Egypt, Algeria, South Africa all have serious military capabilities. But Ethiopia's strength is different. It's not just about equipment, it's about survivability. It's about how long you can fight, how much pain you can absorb, and how expensive you can make victory for your enemy. And if we're being honest, that's what real military power looks like. So when people joke about the giant of Africa, maybe it's time to look beyond GDP charts and hardware lists. Because when it comes to sheer difficulty of invasion, Ethiopia stands in a category of its own. Mountains, history, numbers, experience, and national will all combine into something that is extremely hard to defeat. In 2026, with global powers already stretched thin and conventional invasions proving less effective worldwide, Ethiopia's defensive profile is stronger than ever. Any foreign power considering military action would have to ask a simple question: is it worth it? And the answer, historically and strategically, has almost always been no. Ethiopia doesn't need to conquer anyone to prove its strength. Its power lies in the fact that others struggle to conquer it. That's why Ethiopia isn't just another country on the map. It's a fortress shaped by time, a nation built on resistance. And whether the world likes it or not, Ethiopia remains one of the hardest places on earth to invade. If you're Ethiopian and you felt this, you already know. If you're not, now you understand why history keeps repeating the same lesson. Invading Ethiopia is easy to plan. Surviving it is something else entirely.